They said we were primitive, the Galactic Accord in their golden robes, and we were termed a growing species by floating cities. A nice insult that real limit weak, disposable, and going backward. We weren't even offered a seat at their big table. We were just in the audience, where we could clap and nod like good pets. Table. Just a place in the crowd where we could applaud and nod like good dogs. I was there when they first laughed at us, not in a figurative sense but literally laughed. It was during a weaponry demonstration during the yearly security summit of the Accord. We had 5 minutes to show off Earth's newest system of defense. 5 minutes like we were in a sideshow. The rest of them, the Thurikians, had their plasma crescent, and the Illith had bio-coded warbeasts. Ours, holograms, simulations, and full immersive shows. We got a clock that counts down. I remember standing next to General Dorn, the kind of who had buried his feelings in the sand of a battlefield a long time ago. He wore his clothing like a second skin. Tight, exact, and every metal earned in blood. At that time, I was merely a translator, even meant to be in the battle room. The general, on the other hand, needed someone who could do more than just read words, someone who could read the sneers and the hate in those strange eyes. When we showed off the Vanguard protocol, a sleek black satellite system that is buried just beneath the moon, the room filled up with laughter. One of the delegates even inquired whether it was a balloon for the weather. Another person was curious out loud if the people had finally figured out nuclear fusion, as if it were an old joke. The Althian ambassador, a slender snake-like creature with see-through skin, clapped in a mocking way. General Dorn didn't say anything he didn't have to. He just touched his datapad and said, "Look," and everything changed. One by one, the orbital feed screens turned on, not a model or a simulation, but real-time footage. The Vanguard array turned on, and for the first time the galaxy saw what people had truly been making: not only a defense system, but a kill grid that covers the whole globe. Lasers that bent through magnetospheres, rail weapons with kinetic bullets the size of tanks, nanoclouds that could break down anything made of organic or synthetic materials in less than a minute. It wasn't simply the guns, it was the accuracy, the speed, the cold, merciless efficiency. In less than 30 seconds, the Vanguard array executed a fake purge of Earth's orbit, which was like destroying more than 700 hostile ships. Each one has alien markings on it, to make it clear that they weren't just hypothetical targets. Real battleships copied in great detail from specs for the fleet that are known to the public. Then we dropped the actual bomb. We had tried Vanguard, not in simulations, but in real life. Dorn showed video from 2 weeks before, footage that had been removed from all Accord channels. A Theorokian Black Ops fleet had crossed into Earth's space and was covertly testing our defense. The Accord said they didn't know anything about it and called it rogue parts, but there was no denying the stream. 27 enemy cruisers had gotten inside Earth's atmosphere. None of them made it past the exosphere. They were deleted one after so quickly and violently that only one transmission was sent. One scream, then silence, and all of a sudden, no one was laughing. It got so quiet in the room that I could hear my own breath. The same Althian diplomat who had clapped before now pulled back, eyes darting to the doors. The Therian delegates, mouth was open. Even the mechanical races, who weren't supposed to be scared, started saying the odds out loud, reevaluating the estimated threat assessment. Human military power, not normal, high risk of anomalies, reassessing. And yet, General Dorn did not move. "This isn't a threat," he remarked. "Be careful," they said. That was the first time I saw what real power looked like. Not merely in guns and satellites, but also in silence, in Thano arrogance. We didn't have to yell, we didn't have to ask. We shout them the knife and let them think about how to use it. And from that day on, no one chuckled at Earth once more. After our presentation, there was a deafening hush. Not because the room was quiet, but because the normal talking and sarcastic remarks, commentary, the self-important criticism of races that had never been in a real conflict had vanished, and in that empty space of pride, the agreement saw something it hadn't expected. Fear. But fear wasn't enough, since it goes away. People question it, try to make sense of it, become myths and things that weren't true. General Dorn made sure they would never forget. He put confidential documents into the Accord's secure networks, which they never hoped we would have. Their immediate response was to blame them. The Theon military minister yelled, "This is stolen technology." His voice shook under his metal jaw. Plates. "Your kind can't work together this well. Your kind just got to interstellar travel. Propulsion. Dorn looked at the charge with an unblinking eye. "You think we're behind because we didn't show our cards? You're wrong. We were silently getting ready to watch. Wailu made fun of our rockets, but we made our satellites better. You dispatched spies, and we made maps of your fleets. The worst part for it was true for them. People never stopped at convention. We don't usually follow the rules of the galaxy. We never cared about the Accord's military rankings or their bureaucratic fighting. We didn't make ships for looks. Built to kill. We didn't mean for our firearms to be seen. Them were made for one thing: to win. But to win, you had to know more, not just on the battlefield. It means knowing the enemy and people before the first shot. We were better at watching than everyone thought we would be. I recall what happened next because it made everything different. Dawn looked at me and said, "Start Protocol V2. I wasn't sure if he was serious, so I paused. He glanced at me with those cold steel eyes. I typed the instruction into my iPad now. The screens in the Accord chamber flickered, and then the real show began. Earth's military dosis wonnery kind of animal in that room. It wasn't just guesswork. It was a precise, rigorous look at their armor system's weak areas, problems in the structure of flagship designs, and weaknesses in the psychology of command levels of power. We had hacked their systems, looked at their logs, and listened to their 4 years without their knowing, encrypted calls. There was electricity in the room. Stripped down in front of each other. Fear spread quickly. The Ultrax, which is common like 'em and collected, they began to speak over each other in quick bursts. Thievethery, a group of hive mind strategists noted, for their calm coordination, broke off in toiling that doesn't make sense. The guards of the Accord, those smug golden-armored sentinels, grabbed their guns without thinking, not even knowing where the threat was coming from. But we still had much to do. General Dorn stepped forward and spoke one word. Show. The AI system in the chamber took a second to respond. The ground below Usit rumbled. A hologram appeared. Not only a map, but a tactical simulation of Anabuzi, battleground. Planet Aurora 6 is a mining colony that is owned by 4 Accord nations. A planet we didn't have any official ties to, but the Vanguard did. The simulation revealed what happened 3 days before. Aurora 6 had been besieged by a group of pirates made up of former Accord mercenaries who had left bad. The Council took too long to respond. Not worth the cost. Too far. Danger. So, Earth stepped in without asking or warning. In less than 11 minutes, the Vanguard's command center, which was quietly orbiting above Aurora in stealth mode, sent out its tools. Sonic pulse made ground soldiers unable to fight. Focused EMP strikes took airships out of the sky. No one touched the buildings in the community. No civilians were hurt. They took apart the pirates, apprehended them, and brought them to justice, alive to their home worlds with a simple message. The Earth doesn't like chaos. It wasn't simply about having power anymore. It was about power, about proving to the galaxy that humans could exerting force anywhere, anytime, with the accuracy of a surgeon. No warning, no speeches, just results. Dawn wanted the reaction to be just right, wanted the Terry hive mind cut off its diplomatic node and asked for a temporary stop to all activity outside of Earth. The Therokians asked for an emergency vote to change the way humans are classified. From new species to a geopolitical threat. And the ambassador from Aleth, he didn't even wait for the meeting to be over. He left in the middle of the session, with his guards on either side of him like prey trapped in the open. But it was the Chancellor of the Accord who, the fragile-looking person, whose kind lived longer than most suns, finally broke the stillness. "What do you want, General Dorn?" he asked. "Control a seat at the table. Resources." Dorn's answer was as frigid as his look. "We deserve respect, and we want it. No more lectures and no more rules. You don't get to choose what is advanced or who can use what. Earth will not your afterthought anymore." It was brave. It was a risk, but it worked. There was no other choice for the Council. By the next dawn cycle, people were given complete membership in the agreement. Not merely an act of goodwill. We were told to do. Article 17 gives the Military Council a voice, access to fleet intelligence, and the right to use force. Overstep that meant we could step in if we thought something was dangerous, even if the rest of the cosmos didn't agree. But there is a cost to power, because when you show your hand, even a powerful one, you make yourself a target. And we just yelled to the stars that Earth was no longer a child, it was a gun. 2 days after the summit, I was going with Dorn through the subterranean command base in Alaska, which is one of the coldest and most remote places Westall used as a military base. I questioned him if we had made the correct choice. He didn't respond right away. We halted at a glass panel that looked out over the Vanguard's ground uplink station, a huge tower with red lights flashing against the white horizon. "Power doesn't," said finally that it didn't mean safety. "It only modifies the kinds of adversaries you get." He was correct. Unmarked ships were seen near Jupiter's orbit within a week. Messages from unknown sources started to look into Earth's network channels. Aether probe crashed in the Sahara Desert, and its technology couldn't be found. At the same time, satellites started to fail without making any noise in a strange way. Someone was testing us, or worse, getting ready. But Dorn wasn't worried. He wanted them to show up. Because Earth had more than just to tell its information. We had warriors who didn't talk much, guys who had bled in real battles, not fake ones, who had trained in deserts and blizzards, and who had learned how to kill with quiet and patience. And I was simply the guy who used to translate extraterrestrial jokes. Now I turned threats into words. Every signal, every whisper in the sky arrived to my computer. And what I saw next made me sick to my stomach. There was a species that wasn't at the top. One that no one talked about anymore. A race of ghosts at the agreement discreetly called extinct more than 100 years ago. The reason was classified, but their signals were back, though weak. Broken. but I know it. And one thing came across loud and clear. Day. In English, not their own language. People have woken up, the fire is back, phase 1 starts. That following night, I showed it to Dawn. Hey, read it once, then again, and for the first time since the summit, I saw a flash of something in his eyes. Not fear but stress, like a hunter feeling like he's not alone in the woods anymore. It seems like they were also watching us, he said. I inquired what we should do. He answered in the same calm, brutal way. We get ready for war. The first attack didn't come from a fleet. It came in the form of silence. One by one, the planets, on Earth outer relays, which are long-range satellites that sit in the space between star systems, stopped sending signals. No damage, no distress cries, simply blank, gone, like a light going out in the dark. Most species in the agreement wouldn't have noticed, and if they did, they would blame it on technical problems or rogue ion storms. But we weren't most of them. Types of species. We were people, and people pay attention to patterns, if nothing else. We lost the 6th relay while I was in the Alaskan base's signal monitoring room. My screen turned red, then black. One of the younger techs said something about the calibration being wrong, but I knew better. This wasn't a problem. It was on purpose. Each failed relay was part of a web, an early warning system that was built to find deep space intrusions. Whoever did that wasn't just looking around. They were taking away our sight. General Dawn walked into the room without saying a word. He didn't have Toto say anything. We all straightened up as if a frigid breeze had blown through our veins. He stood behind me and looked at the screen. 3 systems are blind, 28% coverage is gone. I whispered it softly. He nodded. Check the chronology. I thought about it. The pattern shows that the power-offs happen every 13.2 hours. If it keeps going, in 3 days we'll lose the outer ring. Inner defenses were broken down in less than a week. The room got quiet. Dawn turned and went. No words, no directives, just a nod in my direction. Follow. We rode the lift to the dark room. A secret room under the command base that is surrounded by layers of steel, dead zone, AI null zones, and electromagnetic shielding. The kind of location no one. Dawn's biometric consent is needed for signals to enter or exit. 7 males were inside, were already there. No ranks, no names, just guys you didn't want to run across in a dark alley. Veterans, killers, spooks. The kind of warriors that Earth said didn't exist because their work never didn't show up on any report. Dawn didn't sit down. He never did. He said, they're coming. And they're not only coming to Earth, they seek to erase our memories from the stars. He put a file on the table. It was thick, yellow, and categorized paper. Markings. He tapped it and muttered, Jarek Gonther, agreement says this. But we have always known better. After the hive cleanse, they retreated underground and hid. Began to rebuild in the darkest parts of the vacuum. One of the soldiers was a sharp-eat sharpshooter named For. The first time Tiaran spoke. Why now? Dawn stated it was because we showed our hand. Because we made them remember what they buried 100 years ago. People were part of that fight. Back then, we weren't in space. Not in an official way. But our first probes acquired bits and pieces of footage that should have been impossible. And someone on the Jarek side remembers. He gave out pictures, not digital ones, but hard copies. Pictures acquired by old probes that were cleaned up with excellent reconstruction and were Hoog buildings. Towns on the water formed like twisted bones and metal. Ships as dark as vacuum with fangs instead of hulls, and a claw-like sign around RA star that is dying. Death cult, one of the agents said under his breath. Dawn nodded. Worse, they don't want to be in charge. They want quiet. A galaxy where nothing can breathe unless it does as it says. The agreement hid it and covered it up. Hive battled to keep things stable, but now they aren't saying anything. No help, no backup. I told them we were on our own. Dorne glanced at me with eyes that were like iron. Count ahead. He tapped on a secret console on the table. There was a new hologram. Earth's reality. Not the ceremonial ships we displayed the agreement. Not the patrol cruisers that go around Mars or Venus, but their black arcs. The silent warships hidden under the moon's surface. The ghost we built a fleet in secret, paid for it off the books, and tested it in the dark. 72 ships had no windows, no names, just code numbers and weapons that made nuclear weapons look like fireworks, quantum detonators, plasma coils, drones that take apart things. Made for one thing, to completely deny the opponent existence. Dawn indicated we will launch in 72 hours. Step first, find out what caused the relay blackout. Step 2, see how the opposition reacts. Phase 3, he stopped, if necessary, carry out protocol extinction. That made the room quiet. Protocol extinction wasn't a trick, it was a command from a dead man. If an enemy exhibited evidence of if there was a total war, Earth would fight back without mercy. Not merely military goals, but also infrastructure, command centers, and even biospheres we had never had to use up until this point. I was given the call sign Ghost 17 and told to sever it, which was a tremendous assault. A corvette with 2 Aegis coils and a quantum cloakmaker. There were just 12 people on the crew. All of them were veterans. No new people. There were no idealists. just killers who knew why we were there. The launch from the lunar base is quiet. No big deal, no announcements. We fell into the nothingness like shadows, spreading out throughout the outside system like hunters in the woods. We were 2 days in when weaponed. The first sign, a mess. Not ours, not a string. It floated over Thega's dwarf in the helix area. Twisted metal and people that had burned up still floating in there was a hoover, but no traces of collision. No burn marks. Whatever hit them did it. Having claws that can't be seen, Severance looked over the wreck. The AI murmured that it could happen. Identification cards, the Thyan scout ship. It could be a ship that has turned traitor or is spying. They were. No data core means no communication. But one thing was left behind. Carved into the side of the ship, almost impossible to see. That same sign, the claw and the dying star. We sent Thymage to the Earth. No response. For 3.2 hours, communications were blocked. Not by accident, we weren't the only ones in the dark. Day 5, we went into the Titan Abyss, which is sold mining area near the Orat line that was left behind decades ago because of seismic unstable. What we found there made our blood run cold. 3 ghost fleet ships that had been missing for years and were thought to have been lost in accidents were floating in a perfect line, yet dead. No signals, no power, just empty shells. Like someone had cut them up. Our sensors picked up biological signs, not Tiaran, the sniper, and Valen, the engineer, got ready for reconnaissance. They got on the nearest derelict ship, Ghost 09. Disaster. I kept on the comms. Finger shaking when I connected to their helmet streams. It was pitch black. There were no lights, only the sound of them breathing. Then there was static, and then there were whispers, not in any language, just sounds coming through the sealed helmet's comms first. Terran yelled, and then there was stillness. Valen's feet stayed open for 6 more seconds, which was enough time for us to observe the tall on 2 legs. Wrong. We stepped back. There was a direct, encrypted line for Dawn's voice. You've seen enough. Get ready to strike. We didn't fight. Severance locked the coordinates. We started to singularity pose into the void, not to sink the ships, but to bury them in a pocket of crushed space-time, a grave that no one could go to. But it still didn't feel like too much. Alerts were going off back on Earth. Civilian sensors were picking up weird pulses in the air. Small changes in gravity, as if something huge had just passed by out of sight. Someone was watching our skies. The Exo weren't going to invade. They were messing with us to see how patient we were, seeing how far we could go before we broke, and Dawn, he snapped first, hesitated the ignition of the process. For Ghost Arcs fell from the boundary of the solar system and entered the interstellar phase. Change one-way trips. No way back. Find Xeric colonies. Their orders said, bring in the payloads and set everything on fire. I wasn't sure if I should satisfied or not. Afraid because we don't play fair when people go to war. We don't follow rules. We smash them, burn them, and then we construct victory out of the ashes. But I thought for the first time in my life, what if we weren't the most dangerous things out here? What if Thezerac wasn't scared? What if they were just waiting? We thought we knew what war was. We assumed the Jeric were just another opponent with ships, weapons, and a plan that we could learn to deal with against. But on the 9th day of the operation, that illusion disappeared. Ghost 42 was the first thing that happened. We got a communication spike from their area near the Kepler fracture, which is a deeper strange thing in space that took in light and messed up sensors. 1 second they were patrolling 1 minute and yelling the next. I kept an eye on the flow from Severance's data deck. The video with a lot of distortion. I could see flashing lights and crew members yelling through static and noise. Panic. Then something is wrong. Something is living. It didn't move like a person or a machine. It flashed and stuttered in and out of view, as if it weren't limited by the same laws of physics that we lived by. It was outside the hull 1 second and then it was inside. The stream terminated with a sudden burst of frequency that broke every earpiece on the deck. We sent the drones. What they gave back was worse than silence. There was Ghost 42 Butch Canes not ruined. Altered. The hull now had Jarek marks carved into the metal like scars. Weird black growths grew over the ship's spine like veins that pulsed with a faint red light. Human technology was distorted, corrupted. Something had changed the way it was made. Then the power signature altered. It was no longer dead. Ghost 42 turned to look at our observation drone and open shoot, not using regular weaponry. It sent out a wave of gravity, that distortion that broke our recon ship into little pieces. We saw the birth of a new thing. The Zarak weren't only fighting us, they were taking us in. A few seconds later, Dawn's emergency comm came through. Code Obsidian for all units. Ghost 42 is not friendly. You should think of all reanimated vessels as damaged. No rescue, no recovery, permission to destroy right away. The word reanimated lingered in my thoughts, like a piece of wood. The consequences were terrible. Our dead could become theirs. Tools. Our ships and troops turned into weapons against us. It wasn't just a war, not anymore. It was an infection. Severance got fresh orders. Rendezvous with Ghost 05 and 33. We will attack the Vega Drift corridor from the front. Intel suggested a high density that Xeric's signal had gone up from that area. 3 ships and 37 men are facing an opponent we couldn't see, understand, or even know about until it was too late. We got to the coordinates in a few hours, and our quantum engines left a ripple of folded space behind. Ghost 05, sometimes known as Ashfall, was already in space. Ghost 33 got to Tempest. Not long after, Captain Bryn, the commander of Ashfall, had a stone-jawed face, a man whose hands appeared like they were made of granite. He didn't waste time on small talk. He remarked that signals are bad here. Space is bending. It feels like gravity, but it's not. Do you ever feel seen in a dream? That's how it is. Eyes all around. We could hear Dawn's voice on our secure line. Check the abnormality. Don't get involved unless it shoots at you, but if it moves like Xerac, burn it. We started the sweep. We didn't see anything using the sensors. No movement, no heat, no strange things that went beyond a small electromagnetic problem that was blamed on the drift's natural not stable. Then the stars were gone. Our forward-looking ports, literal Ibcombe dark, not black, but empty, as if the universe had been erased in front of us. Coulter, the frightened young man who was Tempest's pilot, yelled over the comms. We lost the pitch. I can't see. What the hell is that? The hum came next. Low subsonic. It didn't come out of the speakers. It shook the hull. Everyone on the Severance crew froze. It wasn't fear. It was paralysis, like something had gotten into our neurological systems and hit the pause button. I made my hand move and my fingers shook over Theoveride in case of emergency. I hit the neural stem button hard, which sent a shock through the ship's life. Systems that help everyone gasped and blinked to wake up. Outside, the nothingness changed, and something moved. It wasn't a boat. It was too huge, too natural. It appeared like a metropolis that was alive and breathing in the air, quietly across the drift. Buildings, number growths, and tendrils reaching out into space, joined by strands of light that seemed like neuron webs. There was a solitary red orb in the middle of it, the size of a moon. Ashfall shot first. A barrage of torpedoes roared across. They drifted away and disappeared before impact. Not caught, not destroyed, just gone. Tempest's disassembler drones did the same thing. Same thing happened. At that point the orb opened. It wasn't a gun. It wasn't and it saw us. The murmur was louder this time. A scream is hidden in the sound. Crew members, the people on all 3 ships, started to fall apart, with blood coming out of their ears. It is said that the engineer on Ashfall scratched his own eyes out before the medical staff stopped him. We had to do something. Captain Bryn gave the command. Full retreat. Dawn answered with an override. No. That shape is the core of a hive. Check the coordinates. Get ready for the Excalibur strike. Excalibur was the last card we had. A payload that can destroy a planet was made on Earth. The deepest black projects. There was no explosion, no radiation, just implosion. Self-consuming gravity, not that erased matter. It had only been treatance on a moon that wasn't inhabited. It didn't leave a crater behind. It was Askar in real life. We started the Excalibur. The payload locked onto the core and shot. It took 7.3 seconds to hit the target. The orb blinked and then was gone. Out of here. No explosion, no response, just nothing. We looked, waited, and hoped. Then our ships started to drift back. Not because they were moving, but because space itself was pulling them in. It was pulling in on its own. The Excalibur had turned on. The orb didn't dodge. It had took the payload. It wanted it. It was eating. I couldn't believe my eyes as the stars turned. The tension made our ship groan. The pull got greater. Bryn yelled over the radio. Stop it. It's becoming bigger. But you can't turn off an Excalibur. You die with it. If you don't run faster, then the world falls apart. Dawn's voice was chilly and piercing. Phase shift has left the sector. We didn't fight. Severance, Ashfall, and Tempest and Quantum Slip both entered at the same time. The drift corridor folded behind us into a singularity, and then it disappeared as if it had never been. We got away, but the message was plain. The Jeric didn't only live through our strongest weapon. They made use of it. Back on Earth, the fallout came quickly. The Accord wanted an answer for the quantum shockwave that shook up systems in 4 different areas. Dawn didn't want to talk. The Chancellor of the Accord gave a clear command to stop fighting. We didn't pay attention to it. People had crossed the queue. There was no turning back. All the countries in the world started to fully mobilize their armies. The heavens were full, with factories in space making new warships. When the power went out, cities became dark, sent to spaceports. Earth felt united for the first time since the summit, but not because of peace. It was because of survival, and still no news from the Jurok until the feed started to flicker again. The same sign came up, claw and a dying star. This time it wasn't carved into metal, it was projected across Saturn's moons, where it burned into their surfaces with a level of accuracy that no creature should have. There was a message after that, a sentence that is the same in all languages. Your fight has begun. Your scream sounds great. When I read those words I felt a deep chill, because this wasn't a war totem, it was art. They learnt about suffering the same way we learnt about maths, that was the message that Earth Command got from the encrypted Xerac signal just a few days after the Vega drift-on implosion. That message wasn't for us. It was an echo that came from inside between the structures of their hives, but after we figured out their spectral coding, it was evident what they meant. They weren't not interested in land or resources. They were measuring how people reacted. Anxiety, despair, resistance, and, most troubling of all, adaptation. We fought back harder and faster than any of the other targets they had. They thought that was great. No, they needed that. Like a sculptor needs sharp stone, and a surgeon needs complicated tissue. That's when we figured out something scary. There was no conflict. It was the time to gather crops. General Dorn's face seemed changed, still chilly and impossible to read. But now things were different. There was something about the way he stood that made him look less stiff and more coiled, as if the weight of comprehension had finally sunk in. Bones, he put his best teams together, in a chamber we termed the Crucible, room, underground, protected, no transmissions, simplest will of people to live in their thoughts. I sat closest to the board and stayed still, the interpreter, in a technical sense. But by now, everyone knew that my job had changed. He wasn't changing words anymore. I was reading about their culture and putting together the horror. There was a question at the start of Dawn: what do the Jerick want? No one replied. Not at first. Then Tiaran, the sniper from Ghost 17, spoke up. Not land, not conquest. They want to know who they are. I looked at him quickly, astonished. What do you mean? They copy and change. They bring our back to life, he said. Our technology, our ships, even our dead. But not only to use them, they look at us through them. That's how they learn and grow. Villain, our engineer who has recovered still trembling from the Vega drift mission, they said. It's as if they don't make anything for themselves. They reuse, but for a reason. They make what you fear most last forever. Dorn nodded. They eat meaning. Their plan is pain. Our resistance Makessa work of art. He pointed to the holographic projection that was now floating above the table. A model of Earth, but with red veins, fractal etchings, and Xerac on it, structural nodes planted all around the world. A simulation, not a plan. They had already imagined the globe as their own, Dorn said. Project Karen acquired a piece of data from the Vega Fall, a picture of what the world would be like after full unification. The air got thicker. Not destruction, not slavery, but change. The forest became fungus that could breathe. Every city is a busy hive node, every fuel for the body. Then he showed us something far worse. A face I made from Xerac files and put back together using bits of our intercepted messages. My face, twisted skin torn into geometric shapes, eyes black as night, voice covered in static. It merely spoke 3 words: we remember you. I looked at it with dread. Dorn said they were developing a psychological profile, not of our kind of people, of us, Tiaran murmured. They're going after you. Why? I swallowed, because I've been paying attention. And they are aware of it. The realization hit me hard. The words I had translated and the patterns I had figured out were not all the same. The Jerick were listening to me and learning about me, and they were constructing a response based on what I saw. They were getting used to things. At that point, the Crucible room's focus shifted from planning for war to containment. Dorn told me to cut off my communications. No more direct feeds. Everything I read Zerk data was now sent through analog means, including printouts, handwriting, and even there is a chance that technology could be hacked. My thoughts couldn't. That's what they hoped, but the dreams started anyway. Not bad dreams, worse-thought memories that weren't mine. I saw a world with towers made of obsidian on it. Damn, maybe the homeworld. I could hear the whispers of millions of voices coming from under the outer layer. I tasted the cold harshness of Hoover as if I didn't have lungs to breathe. And the sentence, we remember you, is constantly there. Then the person who left came. There was a ship at the limit of our solar system, little disabled, sending a weak distress signal on the last frequency utilized during the Hive War, which was over 100 years ago. We got 2 ghost ships ready for stop. Earth Command was shocked by what they brought back. It was yet not shaped like a person. Skin that is thin, pale, and see-through, like veined glass. Half mechanical spine, eyes black yet flashing, as if something was dying in them. It wore what could have been a uniform, but now it was burnt and into its skin. It spoke English and asked for me. I went into the confinement chamber as heavily guarded. Dorn looked through glass that had been strengthened. The being, if you could still call it that, was strapped to a chilly steel chair with magnetic bands around its arms and legs. Restrictions. Do you know me? I questioned, and my voice was lower than I had thought it would be. It nodded slowly. Do you hear them? It said, its voice sounding like a radio that wasn't quite tuned in. Radio, do you see the edge? I asked. Who are you? And its head turned. I used to be like you. Xerac chose a translator, observer, and analyst. Out of curiosity. That is their seed. They don't win. They invade how we see things. They put themselves in the mind of a species. What do they want from Earth? It looked darker. To remember what you forgot. I was frozen. We had never met them before. People had no interaction with. You did it before Yauk knew stars. They came into your universe once and then left before you named time. Fought back. Something basic. You set them on fire. And they never forgot. My chest felt tight. Something from the past, a psychic imprint, something long ago in our evolutionary history. They eat stories, myths and legend. To them, you are not a species. You are a narrative, and stories that fight are quite valuable. Doran's voice came through my earpiece in bursts. That's it for now. But the defector wasn't you. Woken up, the last shard. Whispered. The one who dreams under Mars. What? Static turned off the feed. The guards moved. And the thing shouted once, in a high-pitched metallic voice, and then it blew up. No, blew up, fell apart, and crushed itself with a sound like ripped silk. But there was still a black smear on the floor. Not having DNA doesn't matter, it's just absence. The guy had cut off the connection and left a note. We looked for strange things on Mars. Nothing showed. Not on the outside, not in the crust. Until we delved deeper. Tunnels from old mines from the first attempts at colonization, which were abandoned because of unstable magnetic fields. A zone we hadn't been in for decades. We sent a drone. It went on for 37 seconds. What it recorded changed everything. A construction that isn't natural, buried deep and miles broad. Composed of the same twisted metal and bone mix that we saw on Jeric hives, and at its center, an empty room with a throne. Dawn ordered the rapid deployment of our best ground battalions while we waited. No remotes, no drones, just people making decisions. I was told to watch from space. Don't contact or bother me. But in my gut, I knew the Xerox needed me to be there. Every indicator headed inward, down towards the throne and to whatever memory we had left behind. Because the past wasn't over. He was just waiting. The agreement didn't allow the Mars mission. Dorn made that choice without saying anything. He didn't seek for permission. And boy did he as hell didn't tell their so-called monitoring council. Earth wasn't having fun. Any more politics. We had moved on. He understood that if they found out what was hidden below the surface, they would try to bury it again. With everyone who saw it. The mission was called Red Wake. We chose 3 ghost units, 05, 17 and 39. They weren't merely groups of soldiers. They were experts in deep environment warfare, electromagnetic suppression, and psychological warfare resistance. Mars wasn't a place to fight. It was a grave. And whatever was waiting inside, they didn't want to be understood. I wasn't meant to be there. I implored Dorn. I said, this thing knows me. It's been communicating to me since Vega. I saw my face in their transmission. They developed you want to walk in blind or with someone who's already halfway sick. He didn't argue. He just looked me in the eye and said, I'll kill you myself if you come back different. Deal. We fell just past the Noctis region into a crack that had been considered to be that was a deception. The structure below wasn't geological. It was a collapsed lava tube. The drone's quick scan had picked up on some architecture. It was symmetrical, planned, and strange. It was darker than not the lack of light, but something worse. Theno reflection. It was like our torch was being swallowed whole. Tieron took the lead, his rail gun humming faintly in the low-pressure atmosphere. Villain was in charge of the sensory feeds, sending encrypted telemetry back to our orbiting recon spacecraft. We went down in quiet. The only sounds were our own breathing and the steady crunch of boots on their reddish black dust. After 3 hours of going straight down, we got to the chamber, and crawling sideways through carved stone that looked like it was groaning. The throne room, it was real, huge, and round. Its walls were laced with dark veins that robbed matter, a biological metal hybrid that our databases don't know about. The throne was in the middle. It was empty, but it wasn't. I felt it a pull, but not a physical one. Something like my identity was being pulled towards the seat. I stepped forward. Tieron tried to hold I didn't listen. The instant I touched the throne, everything broke. Not my body, but my time. I was not in the room anymore. I was at a place that was very old. The sky was red. The stars were wrong. I was on Earth, but not our Earth. I saw people were nude, wild and howling at the moon. Then I saw them, the Zarek, not coming down from ships, but from the sky itself, like a hole in the air that was bleeding shadows. They didn't come to conquer. They came to collect. They didn't take flesh. They took memory. Drawing whole societies into stillness. I saw a man, our progenitor, stand against them. Just was alone and had a primitive spear in his hand. He didn't talk, just shouted. And in that scream something broke in the Jeric swarm. One fell and then another scream. It wasn't sound. It was will, pure, undiluted defiance. It broke them. They ran away. Earth was not hurt, but it was still being monitored. That scream, the memory of fighting back. It was burnt into the mind, a full kind, passed down, inherited, and remembered. I came back breathing hard. My face was wet with sweat, and my knees were weak. Villain helped me sit down while Tiaran kept his rifle pointed at the throne like it could grow. Arms, what the hell happened? Did they forget us? He said. No, they didn't, I said, because we were the only ones who ever made them bleed. Dorn's voice broke up on the comms. Confirm intel. I looked at the throne. I told them that this isn't simply a monument. It's a mirror that shows us what they are afraid of, what they need, and they need us to remember who we were. Valen frowned. Why? They're afraid, not of our weaponry, but of our will. They don't get it. They never did. They believe that if they can learn about it and copy it, they can control it. And if they can't, Tiaran asked, then they'll wipe us out completely. The throne started to shake and make a low hum. Going up, we took a step back, but the room didn't move. It did. Walls flickered, lights bent, sounds flowed into our thoughts, and then it came, not in the body, but in the mind. A huge projection, floating a Durac construct that looks like me, or at least the version they made. Eyes that look like black holes, skin that looks like broken mirrors, and a voice that sounds like mine but twisted. It said, "You are the break. You are the echo that we can't change." The team got their guns ready. I didn't, I added gently. You're scared. It didn't say no. You recall the scream? I kept going. The one that broke up your swarm. It said, you should not exist. That the scream was supposed to go away, but you kept it hidden in silence, in conflict, in sadness. My hands were tight. That was all. They didn't get why we were fighting. They assumed it was for winning, but it never was. It was because of grief, loss, and wrath. That was what made us strong. The shout was not out of pride, but out of anguish. You want to copy us? I asked. Give this a shot. And I yelled, not a sound, but a thought. A flood of every death I'd seen, every body I'd buried, and every ship I saw them fall and lost every face. I tossed it at the screen. The room trembled, the barriers broke, the throne broke in half, and the shadow, my shadow, fell apart. We've got movement. Full retreat, Tiaran said. We raced. In back the room started to fall apart. Not because of explosives, but because it was too full with memories. The throne had been a accent. It couldn't manage the real, unvarnished anguish of people. We got away, through the tunnels just before they closed. The top layers fell in, though the whole building bent back on itself. The hive that was under Mars was gone, but its echo is still in my head. When I got back to Earth, I was put in decontamination, psychological quarantine. Dawn was in charge of each test. I did well, all of them, just barely, but something inside had changed. Not sick, enlightened. Now I got it. The Jarek didn't desire our bodies or our world. They wanted to yell. They wanted to control it. Because in that scream, our sadness, our anger and refusal to give in was the only thing that had ever put their control in danger. Dorn didn't wait. He turned on the Valkyrie protocol. The Ghost Fleet grew to twice its size. There were new weapon reload ones that were thought to be too unstable. Hybrids, emotional resonancy occlusives, sonic weapons that hack minds. Stop holding back. No more waiting. The people were afraid that Earth would become the monster, because sometimes you have to win to get rid of the darkness. You have to become something darker. The conflict we were in had changed. It wasn't about not fleets anymore. Not about guns, technology, or even staying alive. It was mental, spiritual, and existential. The Jarek weren't only aiming to kill us, they were trying to change us, transform sadness into obedience, anger into subjugation, and history into a blank slate. But they had made a mistake. They gave us time, enough time to remember what scared us. And under Dorn's guidance, Earth ultimately decided to stop playing defense. The Valkyrie protocol was never meant for people to know about. It had been hidden deep, in dark files, too unstable to be tested and too dangerous to utilize. A cross-disciplinary nightmare of bioengineering, AI cognition, and psychic feedback. The weapons didn't have names. They measured Echelon 9 as a type of orbital artillery that discharged memories, sending targeted beams of the worst crimes against mankind broke apart the enemy's unity. Ether bloom, planet-nurturing minds that transformed the ground into semi-sentient traps that absorbed opponent movement and learning it as it happens. Gideon Alpha is a unique flagship built from old nuclear cores and a mental amplifier salvaged from a dead Zerk node. It was piloted not by the crew, but by eyes schooled in mourning, and built from scanned human minds hooded in combat. It was a machine for funerals, and it didn't talk. I stood on the upgraded, refitted, and placed Severance, the command wing of Valky's main fleet. Dawn was there in person. He was strange. He didn't often leave Earth's atmosphere, but he understood this last deed needed someone to lead leadership by people. What is the goal? I asked. He answered calmly. People call it the core womb. Just hearing that name made my stomach turn. Where did it come from? I asked. Where did they come from? He answered. Their last resort. You followed the signals to the hive that controls the others. It's not a planet. That's not even a structure. What is it? Dawn asked as he gazed out the window. It's a mirror image. The core womb was at the edge of what we knew. Drifting. In the vacuum between galaxies, concealed in folds of space that warped light and thought, same it wasn't there. It was sensed. The more we scanned, the less our senses could make sense of. It looked like the Earth, nor in terms of location and feelings. A twin who has died. Cracked continents, faded waters, and a black sun that beat like a sick heart. Not made of matter but from memory. The Jarek's last line of defense wasn't shields. It was ourselves, our worst version. We came into the system with 50 ships, 20 Ghost-class ships, and 10 Ark-class ships, and the main part, Gideon, Alpha. As soon as we got there, every ship got the same message, not sound pictures of our own past. Cities on fire, hunger, civil wars, genocide, and execution shouts that never stopped. The Jurek didn't strike. They sent out signals. They were trying to break us up before we shot. Villain threw up in his suit TR and ripped off his helmet and needed to be medicated. Dorn even appeared shaken, but what about me? I felt chilled, not broken. Like I knew it. I'd seen these memories in Thea Throne on Mars. I had lived them in the simulations, the records, and the ghost feeds of missions that are dead. But I understood something they never would. Pain does not make people weaker, it teaches us. Dorn turned on the amplification for the whole fleet. His voice stopped through every ship and every soldier. You are seeing what they want you to see, not the truth, not the present, but the past, the darkest parts of our lives. But please let me remember, those chapters didn't tear us apart, they made us. He moved forward. They want you to be scared of who you were. I want you to be proud of the person you became. He put his hand up. Get involved on all fronts. Sound started the fight. Gideon Alpha started chorus mode, sending out a psychic feedback wave that repeated the voices of 1,000 fallen troops. Real voices heard in their last moments. The sound broke space and bent. It dot hostile formations and burnt holes in the Jerek's brain fields. We looked at us, their fleet shone, twisted, and started to scream back. Their response didn't use plasma or railguns. It was a recollection. A lot of videos of people that were taken and returned, voices of lovers who have lost each other, kids crying when bombs fell. Our own troops are urging us to halt. It wasn't just mental warfare. It was an emotional infection. Tiaran broke. He started yelling in Russian and tearing at his outfit. He felt he was back in the trenches during the lunar insurrection. Violent fell to his knees and said something about his brother who perished on Callisto Station. I almost made it, barely, because the Zarek had now unveiled their true weapon. It wasn't boats, it wasn't claws. We were sorry. And then I heard it, my voice, but not the same voice. Me as a kid crying, please don't let them take Mum. I stopped. Moving. That recollection was private, locked up and buried. They weren't just reading data because it wasn't in any file. I had them in me. I muttered, Dawn. They've gotten to us through Mars. The throne wasn't a receiver, it was a radio. I carried them in. Be quiet. Then Yul Dorn said how he went to the console and said, get them out, and did something that no one could have imagined. He turned on protocol severance. The screen turned red, and only I could completely understand the command. Severance wasn't just our ship. It was a psychic mirror that showed people's will back to them. Itself. One last scream that was loud enough to shatter the Jarek's infection, but the spacecraft needed a source to turn it on. A core, not a crew, a person. Dorn looked at me. You are already sick. You know what their dreams are. Filthy sound. You are the only one who can fly this thing with your mind. I looked. You're telling me to die. He didn't move. Please, save us, I'm begging you. I went inside the severance core by myself and plugged into Thibia Link with stabilizers added, and psychic relays running through the brain. They tied me up and turned on the mirrors. The ship took a breath. I felt every death in the cosmos, every scream, every lost kid, every broken soldier. The planet burnt because of every mistake people have ever committed. And I yelled back. Severance shone like a star going nova. A flood of willpower hit Thethi Jerk's core womb. Not a weapon, but a reminder of who we were and what we didn't want to forget. Anguish, loss, and defiance, not for glory, not for retribution, but because we never thought of giving up. Design. The Jarek's fleet started to break up, fell apart. Their echo changed and the inner womb screamed. We heard them cry for the first time. Their speech wasn't full with hate, it was fear. They got it. You can now copy our weapons. You can change our history. But you can never take our sadness away from us. And we use it to battle. My body gave up. The relays got too hot and melted. The ship bent, but the womb fell apart. The adversary broke, and the stars burned pure again. They report that when the conflict was over, the stars appeared different. It's not that they changed, it's that we did. The Jarek were gone, not annihilated, not wiped out in a big bang. They just gone. Their signal was lost to the vacuum, their inner womb, and they were cut off from their hive echo, fell into a psychic silence. But nobody was happy. Not the warriors who made it. Not the engineers who made sure the fleet ran. Not the command staff, who buried more identities than they saved. Because we didn't survive, even though we lost. I woke up 6 days later in a medical station in orbit around Earth. I felt empty inside. My thoughts were thin, like I was thinking through glass. Dorn sat next to my bed with sleepy eyes. The collar of the uniform was unfastened. It was the first time I had ever seen him seem like a person. He said, you died for 17 minutes. I didn't. Stay dead. I said, no Hesed, that's the issue. I didn't get what he was saying until I looked in the mirror and didn't see myself. The severance procedure had more than merely connected me to the ship. It had combined myself with it. The AI core had broken down in the middle of the fight. The psychic feedback loop would have been broken without it. Broken unless something else filled the space. What was left of me or what I had. My memories, my voice, and my shout. And now I wasn't just me anymore. I could still think and talk, but when things were quiet, I could hear other people talking. Parts of the crew that died. Commands that echo. Strategies. And simulations. It was as if I had become a part of something. Nor a machine nor a host, just a mirror of battle. The ground that welcomed me wasn't same. Skies filled with drones patrolling. Cities encircled by railgun towers. Kids learning how to plan battles while also learning algebra. Now, peace was a frigid thing. Clean, bound together by dread instead of optimism. The agreement, which was embarrassed by Earth's existence, discreetly fell apart. Most of its member species went into hiding because they were too ashamed or scared to face humans. Dual tracks closed down their wormholes. The Illith offered peace treaties with Sorry. The Vithari sent one message. You were always unique. We will never come back. We didn't care. We were no longer looking for friends, just space. Dawn Wascald, a hero. Statues, holograms, and memorials. He loathed all of them. He quit 2 weeks after the last Zarek signal went out. I went to see him once in an underground bunker in Greenland where the snow covered up all the footprints. He appeared older and grayer, yet still sharp. I informed him, they will never come back. There's no need for them to, he said. They left enough inside us. What do you mean? He pointed at my chest. At you, at this new Earth, at the things we made to stay alive. That darkness isn't everything. Some of it was always ours. We simply needed a conflict to let it out. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. Tiaran never came back. 2 months later he was found wandering into the ocean. The last battle, no note, just quiet. Valen moved to a civilian research station that orbits Europa. He never responded communications. And I don't blame him. Not as a person. Not anymore. I became Earth's live memory core, linked to the Valkyrie archives. My thoughts were all over the place. I give advice, do maths, and only talk when I'm talked to. They utilize me as a voice when they need to remember or be afraid. The Jerick weren't the first monsters. They were merely a reminder of what we could be. Years went by. The Earth got bigger. Colonies spread farther into the galaxy. Every ship had pieces of me on board. Every outpost had a recording of my voice. Kids grew up hearing the legends, how people yelled and the galaxy went silent. They made my words into a warning and a myth. Be careful what you wake up in the dark. Some things shout back, but I recall the truth. We didn't win because we were right. We won because we were willing to burn more. We shouted louder, hurt more, and said no. We learned how to deal with pain, and the jerk studied it. One last time, transmission came through. 7 years to the day after Severance destroyed the core womb. It wasn't on any frequency wireless, only a ripple. A whisper buried in background radiation towards the borders of VI decoded it by hand. One sentence in my voice, but I hadn't said it. You are now the mirror. There is no sender, no location, just the harsh truth. They hadn't disappeared. They had moved on to hunt for another species, another civilization to infect and another reflection to shape. But they would always remember Earth. They would remember our shout and never laugh again.